First of all, I want to say Shalom Aleichem again to Yisrael. It's been a hiatus that we've had, not only in the coming into the studio, but also just last few weeks. Everyone has been getting over. I know you had, yes, you had your bout with Corona, and then we came down with it. So, this is all part of what's going on in the world, and at the same time, we try to keep on trucking, as they say, and the Torah, the learning, the and the chizuk. We all try to get chizuk. So I think that we harken back a little bit to the great leaders that we had in the past, and we can learn lessons from them. I think it's just phenomenal. We'll be able to draw inspiration from them and be able to see how they they also had to deal with, as we always say, trials and tribulations and ups and downs and triumphs and defeats. You know what I mean? Not every single time was there always a triumph. Sometimes there was defeats. There were things that we know were seemingly looked like defeats. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, the end result is that the Torah is Netzach Netzachim, and Netzach Yisrael lo Yishaker, and Klal Yisrael is Chai V'Kayim, and it's all due to the fact that from Moshe Rabbeinu, starting from Avram Avinu, but Moshe Rabbeinu, and all the generations, there's great leaders, and we should be very, very honored. I don't know if the word is proud, honored that we're part of that eternal link, that eternal Masorah of the Masorahs HaTorah and the Masorahs of Hanhaga, and that we gather underneath that banner of we follow in the ways of our Gedolim. And I think that's a great lesson that we should kind of and it's a bite-size, a bite-size statement that, we're all under the banner of the Gedolim. I think that's wonderful. It's wonderful. Happened to be today, after yeshiva, I went to be Menachem Oval, an old Rebbe of Ner Yaakov. When I say old Rebbe, I don't want to make him into an ancient, but it happens to be that I'm getting a little bit older. He's definitely getting older. And he was a very well-loved Rebbe in the yeshiva, Rabbi Chaim David Ackerman, Shalita. And he lost his mother. His mother was 98 years old when she passed away. And she passed away, literally, she came to Eretz Yisrael in Aliyah a few months ago. And she was full of life and was as youthful as you could imagine, a woman being 98 years old. She came from illustrious lineage, and she was born in the United States of America, but she, brought into the world great children, including Rabbi Ackerman. And what was special about it was Rabbi Ackerman has a sister, Mrs. Gitti Eisenstark. She should be Shugutn well. And what was fascinating for me was, especially a lot of people from Ner Yaakov will relate to a lot better, is that when Ner Yaakov first started, it was 1988. And I think that's really where I'm pulling this in a little bit in relationship to who we're going to speak about tonight, which is part 2 of the great Gadol Rav Shach. So let's keep that in mind. In the background is going to be Rav Shach. It's going to be we're going to bring out Rav Shach as best as we can. But the Eisenstarks live in Malodafna, which today, if you go to Malodafna, it's like filled with Jungelite, learning in the mirror and brisk, and it's just it's part of the whole fabric of Ramat Eshkol and Malodafna. But going back 34 years ago, which is 1988, and there was this new yeshiva opened up in Malodafna, 139, and that was Ner Yaakov, fresh new yeshiva starting. There weren't that many, yeshivas, small yeshivas, for the Americans. And Ner Yaakov, came along, and it started in its fledgling stature. We used the basic Knesset, the basic Medrash from Reb Nachum Eisenstein Shlita, that we were able to use as a base Medrash. And we had, I think, 2 apartments that we rented. And when I went back today, it was almost like going back in a time capsule, because the Eisenstarks, they live in that same apartment in Malodafna, very small apartment, and especially in American standards, if you go there, it's a Malodafna apartment. It's old Malodafna, not even the new ones that have been built up. It's really the old ones. And the Eisenstarks are great people, they themselves. and have done great things while they're here, and their children, their family. But one of the things they did was that when the yeshiva started, it just happens to be that it was right next to their house, and they weren't hired for anything. They just ended up being like just the family that took care of so many guys in the yeshiva. And she was almost like a camp mother, a camp mother to the guys. Someone got sick, those days you wanted everything. Oh, which kupat cholim were you on? This and that. Guys came. It was almost like we had to figure it out on the fly, as they say. But the Eisenstarks played a big role, and they were very helpful. And we shared stories. And Rabbi Ackerman is the brother. He was a rebbe in the yeshiva, so. And I was thinking about it, was harking back to me. I said, tonight I'm going to speak a little bit about Rav Shach, 1988, 34 years ago. But that foundation of the building of the yeshiva started in a small little place, okay, with 10 boys, started out in the beginning year with 10 boys. It grew to 14. Year 19 was Ner Yaakov. And so why do I say this in context of the Gadol that we want to speak about? Because the real Torah personality that gave his full-fledged support to the yeshiva was Rav Shach Zatzal. And he even gave me the haskama for the name of the yeshiva, Ner Yaakov. It's a small thing, name of the yeshiva, Ner Yaakov, you know what I mean? He says, oh, that's a good name. That's a good name. I always used to put into context that, the yeshiva was named after my father, Rabbi Yaakov Liv Zatzal, who was a Rebbe in Ner Yisrael. And this was Ner Yaakov. And we know that Yisrael represents, the truth is Ner Yisrael was named after B'Sol Salanter, but the concept of Yisrael and Yaakov, which are really two names of Yaakov Avinu, Yisrael is the Klal Yisrael when it's in its apex, when it's Sar Kel, the Sarim of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yaakov Avinu is the Akev, and Klal Yisrael is like, beaten down, you know what I mean, when we're the tough, and there Yaakov was for the tougher guys, it's for the tougher guys. And Rav Shach said to me, Ich bin the Nasi, I'm the Nasi of the yeshiva. He took upon himself that role, and he gave a lot of advice, he gave a lot of encouragement. And I just think about it, that, the yeshiva was able to grow from a small yeshiva and grew, at its largest, it had close to 100 Talmidim. It's not like the Mir today, but still was considered a very, nice size yeshiva for American boys that came. And one of the things that Rav Shach, I write in the book, that I felt from all the Gedolim that I've had the schus and the great schus to meet, each one has his milas, each one is multifaceted, and each one was great. But Rav Shach was the one, I think I mentioned it last week, when he spoke, you felt it was like the old prophets, the Navi is speaking. What he was saying, it was like the way a Navi would talk. And number two is, when he said something, it was like the Urim V'Tumim. It was when we just finished the parasha of Urim V'Tumim. We'll say over a great vart in a second. But Rav Shach, he had the ability, literally, when he said something, it was Urim V'Tumim, it was the Choshen Mishpat. It was mamish. You felt that it was almost kamat. You felt it, that this is what the Rebbeinu Shem is saying. The Rebbeinu Shem is speaking through the mouth of Rav Shach. He had that siyata d'shmaya, that ruach hakodesh. And I heard a gewaltige vart from my friend Reb Shragi Neuberger on the inyan of the Urim V'Tumim, and I just want to share it with him. But just a very fascinating vart. Now, the Urim V'Tumim was this klaf. We just learned in last week's parasha, which was put into the Choshen Mishpat, and the Choshen Mishpat had the different names of the Shvatim on it, and had different stones. And when they would have a shaila, they weren't sure what to do, they would ask the Kohen Gadol would ask the Kohen Gadol. The Kohen Gadol would ask the Urim V'Tumim, and then things would shine up. Things would shine up and would say. And this letter would shine up and would say, Amen, or would say, famous mises that, it's when Eli HaKohen came and he said, Vaychana, and he said, oh, Shikara, she's a Shikara, right? And she said to him, no, it's not Shikara, it's Kshera. Kshera, because you have to have the siyata d'shmaya to know exactly what it's saying. Same letters, but not the same meaning. So it's a fascinating thing. The Urim V'Tumim was the Kohen Gadol had to be involved with asking the questions. Now, who was the Kohen Gadol in the times of the Mishkan when we were in the Midbar? Aaron HaKohen. So, how many questions do you think Aaron HaKohen asked from the Choshen Mishpat during the 40 years they were in the desert? The Chassam Sofer says 0. Didn't ask one question. Aaron HaKohen never got a chance to use the Choshen Mishpat. Why didn't he use the Choshen Mishpat? You know why? Because the Moshe Rabbeinu was alive. Moshe Rabbeinu was alive. Doing no sfekas. You want to know what you had to do? You went to Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe Rabbeinu said what you had to do. Whenever there was a shayla, you went to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, the koyach of Torah and the koyach of his connection with the Rebbeinu Shalom, no questions. If the Moshe Rabbeinu was nifter, and Aaron HaKohen was nifter, when they went to Eretz Yisrael, then they had to use the Urim V'Tumim. Then they lost that same flash of breers of clarity, which Moshe Rabbeinu had. And then Aaron said, I don't have to ask any shaylas. I have Moshe Rabbeinu here. To a certain extent, I felt in my interactions with Rav Shach that Rav Shach was the Urim V'Tumim. He was the Urim V'Tumim, a bechina of the Urim V'Tumim of knowing exactly what to say. But to a certain bechina, he was like the Moshe Rabbeinu. When he was there, he said something, you know what it is. Our second year of the yeshiva, great story. Yeah, we had been living, we were in Malo Dafna for that first year, and we had planned to move the yeshiva to Har Nof. I lived in Har Nof. Like this, I was walking every Shabbos. I was spending every Shabbos either in the yeshiva, I was walking back and forth from Har Nof. I was in shape then, yeah, but still, our plan was to move to Har Nof. We had a lot of Rabbeim in Har Nof, and we found a villa on the bottom of Har Nof, which then was not completed. And the owner of the villa, the builder who was the owner, said, if you give me $50,000, I can complete the villa, and that will be the rent for 2 years, be $25,000 a year, which at that point wasn't bad. $2,500 a month, something like that. $2,000 a month for a nice, beautiful villa. We could fit in a whole base medrash and bacher. I can't remember exactly how many boys we fit in. If we fit in 30 or 40 boys into the building, but it was a great, great opportunity. But $50,000, who had $50,000? You know what I mean? To me, then in those days, $50,000 was a fortune of money. And I remember I went to Rav Shach, and Rav Shach said to me, "What's going on with the yeshiva?" I said, "We have a building, but the man wants $50,000." And Rav Shach, whenever he spoke with me, the first question he would ask me, he says, "Rav Lif, what's Herzog in the yeshiva? What's doing in the yeshiva?" I always would tell him how the boys are learning and they're steiging and they're doing everything. He says, "Was is mit the Geld?" He was very practical with the Geld. Could be he knew me. He knew that I wasn't this great businessman. You know what I mean? I wasn't like the Podovich Rav, the Rav Nosson Svifingo, that they could raise fortunes. I'm not sure. I always was chayshed that was what it was. The Shach says to me, "What's going to yeshiva?" I said, "We need $50,000. He wants $50,000. I don't have $50,000. He says, Go sign the document, sign the chozeh, and go to America, and you bring back $50,000. Shach said to do it. It was the Urim V'Tumim to me. I went and I signed the contract. I didn't have a penny. Signed the contract. I had to come back within a month. I had to have the money. A month. If not, the contract's not going. It's going to be void. I have to pay a fine, whatever it is. I had to put maybe a down payment. I can't remember what it was. And we wouldn't have a place for the yeshiva to come to because he had needed the money to put it out to finish the building. And I went to America, and I was able to raise $50,000, 2.5 to 3 weeks. And it was, to me, it was clear it was a mifus, because there was no way with my fundraising abilities at that point in my career that I'd be able to put a couple of $50,000. But the Amunas Chachamim that I had, that Rav Shach said, Gei chasme, go sign, and you can bring back the money. To me, that was just, it depicts a little bit what the Urim V'Tumim, these, to a certain extent, really, if you analyze all the Gedolim, they all have this element of being able to make decisions based upon the Koyach HaTorah, Koyach HaYira, but there's almost a certain point of Shach it was like clear, he was the Urim V'Tumim. And last week, I think I mentioned the Maisa that we had during the Gulf War in 91. Not last week, the last time we spoke about the great responsibility, the achrayus that Rav Shach took for everyone. And I went to ask him about taking boys in 91 when they were shooting the Scud missiles, which then they thought was going to be it was going to be chemical warfare. And Rav Shach told me, Rabbi Liff, you can bring your boys. Why? He says, because you're a Bachrim. If they don't come, then they're lost. Other Bachrim, if they don't go to the Mir, they don't go to Brisk, they'll go to Lakewood. You know what I mean? They'll be in America. It won't be the end of the world for them. But for your Bachrim, they don't come. They have to. It's mamash inyan kemat pikuch nefesh. Now that was a statement Rav Shach made to me, and I think I said last time that Rav Shach not only did he say it to me personally, but months later, when the deadline had come to 4 and they were going to shoot the missiles, and we were worried about it, I received a phone call then from Rav Shach's Gabbai, from Rafi Wolf, should be gesund and stark, and he said, Rav Shach wanted me to tell you that what he told you a few months ago, he still holds by the same thing. Your Bachrim can stay. And to me, that showed the tremendous achrayus. But now I want to show, and as I write this in the book, that Rav Shach's statement then was in 1991. 10 years later, Rav Shach's words still reverberated. And what do I mean is like this. In the year 2001, July and August 2001, it's 21 years ago, I had the yeshiva near Yaakov was running. She was ready, was over 10, 11 years old, 12 years old. And for the summer, I had a program that I was involved in called the Seed Program. You're familiar with the Seed Program. It's like a program that started originally by Torah Basara, where Bachrim and Young Light, they go out to different communities, and they stay there for a few weeks, and they learn with Balabatim, learn with Bachrim, they play ball. You know what I mean? It's good for the guys from the yeshivas to get out and to see different communities. And it's good for the communities to see yeshiva Bachrim and that are with them and having a great time. And we were involved with a program in a place which was not in the regular communities. It was like really, really far out in a place called Santa Cruz, California. Santa Cruz, California is a community which is not really a community, very, very few from Yidden over there. And a very close friend of mine, Rabbi Yaakov Grossman, should be gesund and stark, just lost his mother. I just was at the Levaya this week, also a great woman. She should be Zochel Atayv, Mrs. Bella Grossman, Allah Shalom. And Rabbi Yaakov invited me to come with him to this community. We had a kiruv program. And we had a great time. Part of my plan is that I was going to do the seed program, and I took my younger son, one of my younger sons, with us, Yehuda Leib, and I promised that if he'll come to the seed program, first he'll have a good time in the seed program. He'll learn with guys. It'll be a good experience for him, being in America, getting away from being in the Israeli yeshiva tanas, you know what it was. And he loved to hike, and I said, "No, you know what? We'll take off a few days. And we'll go for a big trip." And the plan was that when the seed program would end, we would drive up the coast, California, for 3 days and 3 nights, and we'd see the beautiful countryside, and we'd go a little hiking, and we'd have a good time, and bond a little bit with my son was also part of the plan. And that's where it started. Day one, we drove up we weren't in Santa Cruz, we were in San Diego then. Misnomer. We were in San Diego. We had a seed program in San Diego that year. We drove up from San Diego to Los Angeles. We did a little Los Angeles to Elim, especially the restaurants. We visited with friends of ours. And then the next day we went up to, at the end of that day, we went up to Santa Barbara, which is on the coast. Beautiful, beautiful American, picturesque. And we went for a big hike. We went into the mountains. And the next day, we went to sleep in a hotel. And the next day, we got up and we were hiking more in beautiful streams, and everything was beautiful. We wanted to go see whales. It was a big thing. It was a big thing in my mind to go see whales. I wanted to see Lev Yasson. Eventually, I got to see the Lev Yasson, not on that trip. And then, in the middle of this second day of our trip, all of a sudden, I get a phone call from a parent whose son was supposed to come to Ner Yaakov. It was at the last part of the summer, so it was like a week and a half or 2 weeks before the Zman was going to start, and I get a phone call from my mother. She said, "Did you hear the news, Rabbi Liff?" I said, "What news? I'm sitting in California. What do I know about any news?" She says, "You didn't hear about the bombing of the Sabara restaurant in Yerushalayim?" I said, "No, I didn't hear anything about it." And she told me there's horrific bombing. And August 9th, 2001, right in the corner of King George and Jaffa Street. It was a Sabara restaurant. A lot of from people were there. And I think 130 people wounded, 15 dead, 7 children, 1 pregnant woman. A lot of people, from people, not from people, didn't make a difference. Yiddish blood was spilled. Horrific event. So I said, wow, that's terrible. He says, well, Rabbi, tonight there's a meeting in Los Angeles. All the parents, and we used to get a lot of boys from Los Angeles, are having a meeting. They're not sure if they want to send their kids to Israel because of the security situation. And that whole time period, there were a lot of bombings that were going on. So this was like, so she says, where are you? I said, the truth is I'm up in Santa Barbara. He says, I advise you should come down to Los Angeles. There'd be a meeting. Now, I thought the meeting was just for the Nir Yaakov parents. I said, I'm going to come. So I had to do a disappointing end to our trip. My son, who had waited so long for that trip, okay. Then I was thinking, I'm going to have this. I didn't realize, who was going to be at the meeting. I thought it was just going to be Nir Yaakov Talmidim. Then I ended up finding out it's not Nir Yaakov Talmidim. It's the whole Los Angeles. All the parents from all the boys are supposed to go to the different programs there, and the girls' seminaries. The more modern places, everything else. They're having it. Everyone's going to be there, and it's a big meeting. There may be 100 parents, from Los Angeles, and I had to go. And on the way down, I remember calling my Rebbe, Reb Ruvain Feinstein. I said, Rebbe, what should I tell them? She says, you have to tell them that, for sure these are difficult times. But Lamaisa, but you have to have bitachon, and you'll do whatever you can security-wise. But to make a decision not to go is not good. And it reminded me of what Rav Shach had said to me. That Rav Shach had said to me earlier, 10 years earlier, it said that for your boys, the not going is going to be sakonas nefashos. And when I got to this meeting, all of a sudden, I became the spokesman for all the yeshivas and all the seminary programs. No one else was there. And there were menalim there, rabbanim, mechanchim, and a lot of them backed the position that I took. And I became like the de facto, not because I knew more than, I did know more because I lived there. I said, you know what, it's a terrible, terrible thing. And I know that it's very, very hard to understand. I said that all the yeshivas and seminaries have to do a lot. I remember that year we put up 24/7 security. We had a guard that cost us a fortune of money because the people were like, they want to know there's some sort of security arrangement. Even why would a guy come to the middle of Gula to go make an attack? But, you can always be a Monday morning quarterback. We had to do it. But I said, the real issue is, and this is, I said, and I draw inspiration from Rav Shach's statement. I said, what's the alternative? Alternative that you're not going to send your son to yeshiva, or you're not going to send your daughter to the seminary. And where are you going to send her? You send her to university. What's going to be with her? What's going to be with him? Are they going to end up getting what this year is going to be for them? Something which is going to last them for the rest of their lives. And is it not a bigger sakonas nefashos that they should lose out than they shouldn't lose out? And the truth is, because I had that conviction, which from the Urim V'Tumah from Rav Shach, I was able to give over that message in a very, very positive light, together with what my Rebbe had said, and we stemmed the tide. And I said something very interesting. I said, you know what, in Los Angeles, you're the first people making this meeting, but the truth is, this same meeting is now going across the country. And your decision is going to reverberate around the entire country. Your decision right now, tonight, but what you're going to tell your children, if they're going or not going, that's going to make a statement. And that's going to be a nafkamina for everybody. So you have to take a lot of responsibility. And the overwhelming majority, I remember there was a certain manalim and a certain principal of a Rebbe, and he said, I'm sending my son to yeshiva, and I know the dangers and this and that, and I'm sending this one time, I'm sending his daughter. All of those different people, everyone together, we were able to stem the tide. But part of it, a large part of it, I always remember, was that Rav Shach had influenced me. He said, L'netzach netzachim, that the Urim V'Tumah had spoken. Just gewaldig. You see how much that responsibility of Rav Shach was so a part of his life. That's the big picture. No, the Gadol, the Achraya is Klal Yisrael, worrying about Klal Yisrael. I always say over that. We said over last time that a Gadol is, he cares about Klal Yisrael. The bigger the gadol is, the more of Klal Yisrael he cares about. And that's great. But then there's that part of the gadol which is not only caring about the klal, it's also caring about the prat, the individual. Yeah. And there's so many stories you could speak about Rav Shach in this context. And since we're focusing on Rav Shach, we're going to speak about Rav Shach. Caring about each individual. And there's a story that I have in the book, which is just unbelievable, because by the Shloshim, I invited a great Talmid Chacham, the great Mashgiach from Ateres, Reb Chaim Volkan Shlita, who I personally am a very, very close Yedid. We learned together in the Mir. He's older than I am. He's definitely a lot more chashuv than I am, but I invited him to come and speak, to give, speak about Rav Shach. He spoke in English, could speak to the boys and speak stories about Rav Shach and to give chizuk about Rav Shach. And he shared with the Olam, and I felt it was just a story that I wrote in the book, and I want to share it with the Olam tonight, is that a personal story happened with him. Reb Chaim Walken was a Gewaldige Talmid Chacham. At that point in his life, he was a Rebbe in Eish HaTorah. He was Rebbe in Eish. He was in the Kiruv Yeshiva. He had learned in Telz. He had learned in the Mir. He was a big Talmud from Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, a big Talmud from Telz. Then he was married. He lived in Ezra's Torah. He got into a teaching position in Eish HaTorah. He was teaching Kiruv. And then Eish had a very big opportunity. They wanted to build, at that point, a yeshuv in Tekoa. And the talk was then, if you know a little bit about the history, that was Arik Sharon was then the defense minister. And Arik Sharon wanted to build all the areas out because he wanted to have a defense system. And he felt if you have a lot of yeshuvim, so who wants to go out to the yeshuvim? Most people, it's the West, people like the West Bank or the Mizrahi. But here he wanted to get other groups involved. So Eish HaTorah was offered a yeshuv that they could send their talmidim, and they would build a yeshiva there, and they would have a shul there. And Rav Noach Weinberg, I guess, Zatzal was the one that was involved in it, and he thought that Reb Chaim Walken would be the person to be great to be the Rosh Hashiva and the Rav of that particular yeshuv. It was called Mala Amos, next to Tekoa. Mala Amos, right next to Tekoa. Today, it's a yeshuv. People do live there. Mala Amos. Now, Rav Chaim Walken was a Talmud of the Mir. At that time, Rav Chaim Shmulevitz already had passed away, and he decided, before you make a decision of this nature, you have to go ask the Gadol Hador. And the person that knew and always had like the Urim V'Tumim was Rav Shach. So he decided to go to Rav Shach, and he went to Rav Shach, and he presented Rav Shach the whole plan, what they're planning on doing. In those days, it wasn't as dangerous as it is today to go into the West Bank, because those days still the Arabs were a little bit afraid of the Israelis. Today, they're not afraid at all. But in those days, they were afraid. Okay, but comes in, he tells Rav Shach this great plan, that Eish HaTorah has, and build the yeshiva, and he'll be the Rosh Hashiva, and he'll be the Rav, and it'll be an opportunity for him. It'll be Parnasa. Also, they're offering him land. They're going to give him a house. He was living in, I guess, a rented apartment as a Torah. He was a regular, Rebbe in a Balchuva yeshiva. He was not making, high-tech salaries. You know what I mean? Chashva Yugaman, Rebbe in Eish HaTorah. And Rav Shach listens to everything that he says, and Rav Shach says, a good tezach. It's a very good thing. He knew him, and he said, it's a good tezach. And he gave him a positive feedback about it. And Sir Chaim Walken felt that he gave him askama. So he left the meeting, and he went outside and he called the people that were involved to make this this plan work. And he says, Rav Shach said it's a good thing, and we can go ahead with this. Everyone was very excited. And then he took the Sherut back to Yerushalayim. He went back to his apartment in Ezra's Torah. And when he walks into the door in Ezra's Torah, the phone is ringing. Phone's ringing, and he picks up the phone. Who is it? It's Rav Shach's Gabbai, Rafi Wolf, who we mentioned before. And he says, listen, Rav Shach said you just had a meeting with him. And he said he wants you to know that, next time you come back to Bnei Brak, drop in by him. It was very strange. He just had a conversation with him. So he knew there was something going on over here. He jumped back into the Sherut, went back to Bnei Brak, and he knocked on the door. He gets into Rav Shach. And Rav Shach says to him, I want to tell you that after you left, I was thinking, that, I told you what I told you, and I still stand by it. It's a good zach, and it's a good zach for you. It's something very, very good for you, you know. But I want to tell you, for my own Talmidim, I don't know if you know, but I have a shita about the West Bank. Shach was very, very politically wise, and he always felt that the West Bank is dangerous because al-tirkuzu b'goyim, and officially the UN doesn't accept, and the United States doesn't accept, and there's going to be pressure, and you might have to give it back, and the Arabs are going to want to take it over, and it's dangerous. Shach says, my shita is, for my own Talmidim, I tell them not to move to the West Bank. He held it about a lot of different places, not to move to the West Bank. But for anybody else, I don't tell them that. They're not my Talmidim, and they have a right to go wherever they want to go. You know what I mean? It's not, you don't have to follow my shita. But for my own Talmidim, that's what I tell them. So I felt I want to tell you that. So Rav Chaim Walken says, Rebbe, ich bin a Talmud. I'm a Talmud. She says, you're a Talmud? He says, yes, I'm a Talmud. He says, oh, if you're a Talmud, I tell you, don't go. Don't go. So Rav Chaim Walken got the answer that he understood what Rav Shach was saying. And he went outside and he called the people and says, listen, Rav Shach told me as a Talmud not to go. But for everybody else, he didn't say, and he said, anybody else can go. He's not putting a chayrim against it, nothing you shouldn't go. It could be a good thing. But for his Talmidim tells him not to go. Okay. So now Reb Chaim Walken now became official Talmud of Rav Shach. And he goes back to being a Rebbe in Eshet Torah. And around 2 weeks later, there's a knock on the door one night in his house. He opens the door, and there's a from Kolol, B'nai Brak kind of guy looking at him. And he says to Reb Chaim Walken, he says, hey, listen, I'm from B'nai Brak, I'm a younger man. And he pulls out an envelope. He says, Rav Shach told me to give this to you. He takes the envelope, opens it up, and inside he finds a $100 bill. $100 bill. So he says, what is this? He says, I don't know, I'm just a shliach from Rav Shach. So he picks up the phone, he calls Rav Shach's gabbai, and he says, Rafi, what is this $100 bill? So he says, listen, Rav Shach, you were by Rav Shach, and Rav Shach originally told you should go take this job, and then he told you when you came back that Talmidim says not to go. Rav Shach feels that you had an opportunity for parnasa, and because of what he told you, you lost that position. You lost that position as where you could have had a parnasa and you could have had a bigger stellar. And he feels that he wants to give you something. You say $100. It's Rav Shach's private money. It's not tzedakah money, and he insists that you take it. Okay, now $100 doesn't sound like a lot of money. First of all, in those days, $100 was nice. You know what I mean? If you were making $800, get another $100, not bad. You know what I mean? Eighth of your salary, not bad. Okay. So what is he going to do? Shach insists he takes the money. He takes the money. Next month, knock on the door. Same younger man, same $100. Next month. 4 years. 4 years. Rav Shach sent him $100 a month of his own personal money. $1,200 a year. Close to $5,000 over 4 years. Why? Because Rav Shach said a Talmud, and I took away shtickle his parnasa. I want him to have, until Reb Chaim Walken became a big Rosh Yeshiva and a Mashgiach, and he had a parnasa. Rav Shach felt already he was on his feet. That's the greatness of the Gedolim. But not only do they think about the klal, they think about the prat. They think about each individual. To tell you, I saw a Gemara, and this will be the end of tonight's Gedolim. But really, when you speak about Gedolim, how can you not speak about, everything is from the Torah. So there's a Gemara that we just had in Moed Katan. The Gemara speaks about different Amoraim, and that they would learn certain psukim and they would cry. And the Gemara speaks about in Moed Katan about, if I'm not mistaken, it was Rabbi Yochanan, I could be making a mistake, and he spoke about a pasuk in the story between Shaul and Shmuel. At one point, Shaul wanted to know what he should do about going to war. He didn't know what to do, and he called up Shmuel's neshama, and he used kishuv, which is a whole shayla how he used kishuv. That's another shayla. And when he brought him about, it says Shmuel came, and the lashon of the Gemara is he came to Oilim. He was Oilim, not Oile, Oilim. And he says, "Why are you calling me up?" He got very frightened. The pasuk says he got frightened. Tergazuni, the lashon is he got very frightened. And if you go through the Shach Tire, the Gemara says, who did he come with? Shmuel came together with Moshe Rabbeinu. And he said, why are you bringing me over here? Why? Because maybe I did something wrong. Why was I called up from wherever I was in the Beis Din Shalmala? I was sitting in the Beis Medrash. Why was I called down over here for this Kishuv Maisa to go tell you what to do? Mastami, I was called because I did something wrong. So I want to bring Moshe Rabbeinu along that he should be made that I didn't do anything which the Torah didn't tell me to do. So I heard over Gavalik Avort that I heard the Chassam Sofer said. The Chassam Sofer said, you have to go bring Moshe Rabbeinu. The Rebbeinu knows what the cheshbon is. The Rebbeinu knows what the cheshbon is, but if you didn't do anything wrong, then everything's all right. Because we know Shmuel's children went off to derech, and he was worried about that. But not because of him. That was their own bechira, why they went off. So why did he bring Moshe Rabbeinu? So there's a Gavaldic insight, which is a tif of art, but it's worthwhile to say over that we know there's two dinim for a person. One is when a person leaves this world, he goes to the Yom Hadin, and he's judged for his different actions, what he did. But then there's what's called the Yom Hadin Agadol. Before Mashiach comes, right? Before Tchias HaMeisim, after Mashiach comes, before Tchias HaMeisim, it'll be Yom Hadin Agadol. Then you're judged for everything. What is it? You were already judged once. You were judged once when you left this world. 120 years, you left the world because Baruch Hu made a judgment. You got Olam Haba. We make another judgment again. What's this double jeopardy over here? You get two. Unbelievable pshat. The pshat is like this. A person leaves this world, he's judged for 120 years he was here. His actions, schusim, chayvis, everyone's, we all have to go to the best shamal. We have what to do tshuva. But then there's what's called the Yom Hadin Agal. The Yom Hadin Agal is like this. Every single person, it's not just what he did for himself, it's how he affected others. And how he affected others, not just how he affected others. It's how he affected others, and how those others affected others, and how those other affected others. Ad seif hadayros. Because if you were able to do one good thing to save one person, and that person saved another person, that person saved another person, then you're going to get schar for that. If you did something which you shouldn't have done, and that affected a person negatively, then affected another person. So the only way you can finally see the full perspective is only at the end of time. When before Tchias HaMeisim, we're going to shots up how everything reflected in the world. We're all part of this ability to have a positive or chas v'shalom a negative. Shmuel was worried. He said, I don't know, I got through the Beis Din to get into Olam Haba, but maybe now my children are doing things, and maybe I did have an effect upon them. That's why he needed to bring Moshe Rabbeinu down. That Moshe Rabbeinu should be made that everything that he did was 100% proper, and he should not be worried. But he was worried. Rabbi said the Gedolim. I think when I look at it in the context of Rav Shach as just one of the great Gedolim that we were merited to have, and Schusa Yoga Leinu, how he affected all of us, the Olam HaTorah, Olam HaYeshivas, in the Klal and the Prat. L'netzach netzachim. There's no question in my mind. He's in the Beis Din Shalmala, and he'll be in the Beis Din Shalmala with Tchias HaMeisim. But all of us, with the lesson that we should all learn from it, is that all of us have the ability to be a gadol. As I said in the yeshiva yesterday in the shmuz, no one's got. You don't have to be Rav Shach. You don't have to be Rav Shiva. You could be an electrician. You could be a person that on the sports field, plays like a mensch. That's what it is. You could be a person that's honest in business, and everyone knows his word can be trusted. Those are the things which a gadol would do. And all of us have the ability to rise up and to be, if not a big gadol like Rav Shach, to be a small gadol. Like we said, today was Yom Kippur, was Purim Cotton. And we always like to say that, people, there's a big, simcha, and we brought down yesterday, we said, there's even some people say you should have a mishta of simcha, and some people bought wine, people have l'chaim. We always say that Purim cotton, zak cotton, gadol. This Purim, it should be great, mitzvah Hashem, 30 days from now we'll have a big one. So this is the message we want to give to everybody. And I'm, again, very, very thankful to Yisrael and JFoundations and the podcast, and looking forward to continuing the series, Mitzvah Hashem. Wishing everyone a good evening. Thank you very much for listening. We want to thank JFoundations.com. If you could sponsor any of our activities, it'd be another way of addressing and being able to give over Torah to other people. Go on the website and show your support. Thank you very much for joining us.